That's great. Yes, so as Joan's excellent introduction shows, I'm very much, an accountant, and as probably many of you have experienced over the past years, I am finding that my role is increasingly moving towards sustainability. So very much looking forward to discussing that with you today, but I would actually like to perhaps take a slightly different, perhaps slightly broader angle to this topic today. So actually, I'll be talking about integrated reporting. I am a lead ACCA's professional insights work on integrated reporting, and I think taking a kind of integrated reporting perspective to sustainability hopefully be thought-provoking. So right, what I hope to cover, first of all, just setting the scene about why we should care about integrated reporting. I will lay out more specifically what is integrated reporting, and then show you a few examples about from companies that are doing integrated reporting very well. I say integrated reporting, underlying this is very much integrated thinking, that sort of mindset piece as well. And finally, just to give a few questions to spur further discussion about bringing integrated reporting into higher education. Caveat is that I'm no higher education expert, so what I bring in is, I suppose, a sort of professional accountancy body perspective from a sort of qualifications point of view, but also just some personal observations that I've made through my research work. So without further ado, the first part, why do we care about integrated reporting? I wanted to frame what I say with this, I think, quite a striking quote from one of the papers that I came across that says, higher education institutions are better equipped and more obliged to support and accelerate change towards sustainability than any other institution, since they can significantly contribute education and moral engagement of future leaders and citizens. So I think quite a big pull for higher education there. And if we take this angle, then I think it's fair to say that we, ACCA, as a professional accountancy body, and universities, we all share responsibilities to our students because we are training future finance professionals, we are training future leaders and citizens as well. So I'll go through each of these in turn. So first of all, if we look at the future finance professionals angle, a lot of the work that we have been doing in professional insights is highlighting that, the finance function is no longer just a scorekeeper. It's becoming a value-adding function in businesses. And so accountants really need to be value-adding business partners. And this has come through really strongly in the employers that we work with. They always emphasize now that they're looking for people with commercial acumen because they want finance people who are going to be involved in strategy, risk management, resource planning, supply chain transformations. And so this points to like a really broad set of business skills and competencies. And we certainly, as we review our qualifications framework on an annual basis, we certainly very much try to keep up with these ever evolving skill sets. And I was talking today about sustainability. If nothing else does, the fact that the IFRS Foundation has now set up an international sustainability standards board, that should send a really strong message that, the sustainability is now sitting firmly in the finance functions remit. And I think as accountants, we do have a lot of transferable skills to take to sustainability in terms of strategy setting, implementation, reporting. I think with our sort of rigor and attention to detail will play a key role in improving the quality of sustainability reporting. And another challenge potentially is that we might see one day, pretty soon, not that far down into the future, when we will have sustainability teams merged with finance teams. So our graduates will end up potentially working side to side with people who may have very different academic backgrounds from them, who may think very differently from them. And on this point of sustainability, regulation is also going to force changes in our qualifications. You may be aware of the BASE consultation in the UK. In the EU, there are consultations on improving the monitoring and enforcement of corporate reporting. Clearly, our policymakers are ready to make some pretty fundamental changes to address what they perceive as shortcomings in the current state of corporate reporting and the audit and assurance. And these changes could mean that very soon in our professional accountancy qualifications, we need to be examining its knowledge about sustainability risks and opportunities and impacts in a much more granular way. Sustainability assurance might also have to be brought into the practical experience requirements. And to that third point there, beyond sustainability, we can be pretty sure that graduates are going to be working in a much more complex and uncertain environments. We will naturally end up with a lot more gray areas the more we expand finance teams' remit beyond financial measures of profit or loss. And the further we try to forecast into the future, there are going to be less black and white, right or wrong answers. So we need to have people who are going to be comfortable exercising professional judgment in the face of often incomplete or ambiguous information. And this again means that finance people are going to have to reach out to experts in different areas and think creatively as well to connect the dots between information that might at first seem unrelated. And in all of this, technology is an enabler, right? So it's a key driver in a lot of the transformational change that's already happening today. With technology, business leaders now have more information to monitor what consumers are looking for, and also things like GPS, mapping, AI is allowing investors to validate whether what a company is saying is really true. And so actually this brings up an interesting challenge to transparency, because businesses are still concerned about disclosing commercially sensitive data. But in fact, a lot of the data they're worried about might already be out there in the public domain and can be verified with technological tools. So sort of another dimension that graduates are going to have to grapple with. Now on to our students as future leaders. Many of you would appreciate that accountancy is a very flexible career, and there are definitely many different possible career paths. In September last year, we launched the ACCA Career Navigator, and this is like a platform that brings together all the different possible roles that a professional accountant can play in different stages of his or her career journey. And against each of these roles, we set out skills and behaviors that are required, and we map them onto how a student might develop an ongoing CPE. I've got the link embedded on the slide here, but just as an illustration, since we're talking about leadership, this is an extract from what the Career Navigator says about the CFO role. So you can see this makes a very clear point that the CFO's remit is going way beyond sort of technical expertise. The CFO is looked to provide strategic support in creating and sustaining long-term value. And so the skills that this requires is also much beyond technical knowledge. We're talking about drive, ethics, judgment, and people skills are being absolutely core here as well. Leadership, collaboration, influencing skills, because in the transformation that will be required to reach a sustainable state, we need CFOs to be able to bring the finance team and actually the whole of the organization behind these changes. So now, our students as citizens, this scene is probably very familiar to you from COP26 in Glasgow last year. And in this picture, then, our new generation of citizens, people who are over the next decades going to be electing and holding governments to account. And I've got here two quotes, one that is quite well known coming out of this gathering. I think, this picture for me fills me with mixed feelings of optimism and worry. Optimism because our young people are clearly engaged, passionate, and not afraid to stand up for their beliefs. But I also worry because this is probably a generation that more than others is intensely anxious about their future. There's a sense that their future has already been snatched away from them by the actions of past generations. And you can see in their discourse, I think, a sense of older generations versus us, a sense of impatience over inaction, a sense possibly of being repeatedly ignored. And add to this, again, possibly the trauma of having to be isolated for long periods during the pandemic that we've just lived through, the impacts of which can take years to come through. And so this is why I do think that higher education does have a role to play in empowering our young citizens to engage constructively and meaningfully with society so that they feel equipped and able to bring about the changes that they want to see. And perhaps also because of the isolation during the COVID period, collaboration might be a particularly important skill for students, not just for their future careers, but also for their well-being today and their ability to contribute as citizens of the future. So things like interpersonal connection, seeing oneself as an integral part of a wider connected community will be increasingly important, and hence why I want to talk about integrated thinking, because that all comes together in this concept. So hopefully in this introduction I've shown that our students as future finance professionals, leaders, citizens, they need to be adaptable and forward thinking, they need to exercise judgment, they need to collaborate, and resilience and empathy might be more important than ever, need to be consciously cultivated. All of this speaks to integrated thinking. And so just to put the question out there, where does the change need to start? I think there's a question along these lines in the discussion, and just wanted you to hold this question in your minds as we go forward. So a lot of background setting, but let's go into what's integrated reporting. Very simplistically, integrated reporting is a way to tell a coherent story about where an organization is and where it wants to get to. And I've done this quite simplistic mapping from a financial statement to an integrated report. And basically, the integrated report enhances the financial statement by, first of all, reporting on different resources and relationships outside of financial performance and position. Integrated reporting provides context to a company's performance because it puts performance against the background of what a company is trying to achieve with its strategy. And thirdly, integrated reporting is also offering that more future-focused lens, so not just presenting past performance, but allowing management and board to communicate their view of the company's risks and opportunities, company's outlook, and the strategic priorities in the short, medium, and long-term future. But hopefully in just introducing this, we're talking about other resources and relationships, we're talking about strategy, so we are really talking about a lot more than reporting here. We're talking about integrated management. And as the integrated reporting framework says, integrated reporting is a process founded on integrated thinking. So what is integrated thinking? This is how the IR framework defines it: the active consideration by an organization of the relationships between its various operating and functional units and the capitals that the organization uses or affects. Integrated thinking leads to integrated decision-making and actions that consider the creation, preservation, or erosion of value over the short, medium, and long term. So for me, I think it pulls out three key concepts: capitals, value creation, preservation or erosion over different timeframes. And also we're talking about the relationships between an organization's operating and functional units. So these three parts, I'll just pick these up in turn. First of all, let's start with value creation, preservation, and erosion. And this is a really simplified version of the integrated reporting framework's value creation diagram. So central to this is the idea that every organization is interdependent on the outside world. The outside world provides important inputs that every organization relies upon for its survival. Things like funding from investors, workforce, or customers. And then the business has its business activities, its strategy, and it also has an external impact on the outside world in terms of outputs and outcomes. Output in integrated reporting language is basically the goods and services a business provides to its customers. So in an example, toy manufacturer, outputs are toys. But besides outputs, we also have wider outcomes, and these outcomes can be very intangible. It might go from a delighted child when he or she finds the toy that the parent has bought for them, or the bonding that happens when the parents play with the child. Outcomes can also be through employment. So employees are paid wages, they then have a certain quality of life, they are able to buy toys for their kids. Outcomes can also be negative, certainly, pollution in the production process, for example. And very important to emphasize here, and I think the core part of integrated thinking is this understanding that this process is cyclical. So there is that arrow linking outputs and outcomes back to input. So many of these outcomes come back to affect the business. So if we think happy parents and recommend the toy brand to other parents, and this increases business sales. If employees are well paid and happy, they stay on experience, the more knowledge and experience they will be able to contribute to the business. We also think in terms of taxes. For example, company pays taxes, this gets redistributed by government, but some of it does come back to benefit the company, for example, in the form of COVID subsidies. And negative outcomes do also come back to bite the business. Pollution could be making factory employees sick. So not good for the planet, but not good for the business either. And customers might start boycotting products as well once the word gets out about it. So a simplistic example to illustrate that no business exists in isolation, and each organization is part of a complex network of interrelated stakeholders and resources. And in integrated thinking, I think there is this core idea, none of us exists in isolation, and we are all encouraged to think about the consequences of our decisions and our actions in that light. Now, the capital is the second part of integrated thinking. And here are the 6 integrated reporting capitals that are covered in the framework. The IR framework defines the capitals as stocks of value that are increased, decreased, or transformed through the business's activities. And some of these capitals may be quite familiar to us because they do feature in the financial statements. Financial capital, financial injections into the company, either by way of equity investors or loans. And then we have this physical concept of capital, our capital assets that we invest in to allow us to generate profits over the long term, property, plant, and equipment. That's manufactured capital. But integrated reporting does look at more widely beyond assets that are owned or controlled by an entity. So say a manufacturer is dependent on clean water, and that clean water is provided by a local water treatment plant. And that water treatment plant is also a key manufactured capital for the business, even though the business doesn't own it. And we have intellectual capital, and intangible assets, some of which get recognized on the balance sheet, some of which don't. So the patents, software, domain names, but also much more intangible things like process, knowledge base, or corporate culture, indeed, all of which can affect the way a business is able to generate value. Then in the bottom row, we have, I guess, the things that typically sit in a sustainability report. Human capital, the healthy, happy, engaged workforce, very important for value creation. Social and relationship capital, that's the relationships up and down the supply chain with suppliers, distributors, customers, and wider society as well. And finally, natural capital. Natural capital can be a key input, as we've already talked about, clean water, for example. But everyone has a natural capital outcome as well. Just think about the electricity that we use and how that electricity is generated. So through our work, we are all creating carbon emissions, and that is a key natural capital outcome that people will increasingly need to be thinking about. The third part of integrated thinking is the people part, because this is also very much about joined up decision-making and action. I've taken this quote from the 2020 annual report of DIMO. It's a Sri Lankan group that was actually one of the first organizations in the world to adopt integrated reporting about 10 years ago. And here they are talking about creating a culture that enables people to pursue their individual objectives and those of the organization, fully aware of the connectivity surrounding their specific domains of responsibility. So linking individual employees to the corporate purpose. And this is very much linked to what other people may call systems thinking. So over the years, I have talked to many different businesses who have adopted integrated reporting. And one of the sort of most common threads that come out, and when people talk about the changes that adopting integrated reporting have brought to their organizations, is this idea that just doing integrated reporting has helped to bring people together. It's helped to boost employee engagement and morale. And so I think this is where integrated thinking can also help Generation Z's quest to have purpose in work, and where it also joins up with the rising importance of having those people skills in the workplace. Now, how do we do integrated reporting? This is my own 5-step approach to managing and reporting the capitals. I'm not going to go through each of the 5 steps in turn, but the main message I want to bring out here is we must start in the at the starting point is the business's purpose. There's always a temptation to go, right, okay, here are my 6 capitals, people want to know about them. I'm going to find a few KPIs for each of them and then find something to say. But that's not going to help bring about positive changes with integrated thinking. So understanding an organization's purpose, having that clarity over an organization's mission, vision, and strategy is going to really help to serve as a beacon to focus management's mind on. And this is particularly important in helping business leaders to stay on course when they're faced with all sorts of conflicting short-term pressures. And also, once you know what the business's purpose is, the decisions about which capitals you're going to have to manage more carefully will flow from that understanding of the purpose. Understanding, being able to explain why a capital is important to the business is really important. Too often I see companies spending pages and pages talking about environmental initiatives, but if they don't articulate why natural capital is important to them, you just get a sense of, well, I don't know why it's important, but I'm saying it's important because that's what I'm expected to say. And again, that's not good enough. So understanding the why is also going to be particularly key, because there are inevitably going to be trade-offs. You are going to be sacrificing some capital for others. An extreme example might be an energy company divesting away from coal power. So yes, that benefits natural capital, but a lot of people could be losing their jobs. So in that trade-off situation, understanding why you're doing something is going to help you feel more confident in that you're making the right decision and being able to explain that decision to others. So only at the last stage do we get to measurement, and hopefully by then we'll know how each capital fits into our strategy and what specifically we're going to do about it. And talking about measurement, I like this quote from Einstein: not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. Just a timely reminder, because I think now scientific advances mean we can measure our impacts in ways that even a few years ago wouldn't have been possible, but we need to focus on the right things. So this is an example from a South African bank, Nedbank, and on the slide they set out, it's an extract from their annual report, they set out clearly their purpose, their vision, and their brand promise. The purpose being to use their financial expertise to do good for individuals, families, business, and society. And wanting the vision being to be the most admired financial services provider in Africa by staff, clients, shareholders, regulators, and society. Usually when I do this with a group of students, I sort of open up for a bit of interactivity and ask them, on the basis of this, what do they think are Nedbank's key capitals? There's certainly already a few here, being a bank, financial capital, talking about staff, human capital, talking about clients, social and relationship capital, and financial expertise, possibly intellectual capital, and so on. And Nedbank really goes into detail here. So you can see, actually, this is a bit small, but hopefully you have received the extracts that you can refer to on the PDFs. Nedbank indeed pulls out in their business model diagram all 6 capitals as, but they have defined them very specifically as to why these capitals are important to them. And capitals are clearly set out as inputs as well as outcomes. And then in the middle circle, you can see Nedbank is laying out in quite a clear way what its main business activities are. By the way, that's quite rare for a bank. Many banks struggle with explaining concisely and clearly what it is they do. And also in the circle, you have their 5 strategic focus areas, and right in the center of the circle is purpose. And on this slide, again, quite small, but a very good example of clarity over their strategic objectives. Each of the 5 colored rows are, again, Nedbank's 5 strategic focus areas. So they have reported KPIs against each of these 5 areas. These KPIs are sort of have comparatives going back to 2017. You also have future targets set out on the same page. You even have a comparison to benchmark, which is based on Nedbank's 3 main competitors. And on the same slide, you can also see which of these KPIs affect executive remuneration. So a very innovative way of showing key performance measures with a real strategic focus, and also transparency in setting out decision making to external stakeholders in that way. And now we've seen Nedbank. Another case study that I wanted to share with you is the story of Intrepid Travel, and hopefully this will demonstrate how integrated reporting and integrated thinking can help a business to remain resilient in the face of what may seem like insurmountable challenges. So Intrepid Travel is an Australian privately owned business, founded back in '89 by 2 university friends, literally started just around the kitchen table. But as you can see, it has grown quite a bit. They now have 3 tour operator brands. They've got 23 destination management companies. They are a certified B Corp, and they are very clear about their vision: change the way people see the world. And they've defined their purpose as to deliver the best travel experiences ever. They are very ambitious, so they want to be the world's biggest adventure travel company by 2025. And as you can see, obviously, their achievement of this ambition has, well, experienced somewhat of a setback in the last 2 years with COVID. Sort of echo of, I suppose, the value creation diagram that we have seen before. This is Intrepid's value creation diagram. And again, clarity over strategy can be seen in that our business column. They want to be a vertically integrated leader in sustainable, experience-rich travel. So very specifically defined there. But as I've referred to, the last 2 years have been exceptionally difficult. In fact, in January 2020, Intrepid was enjoying the strongest sales revenue of its 32-year history. And by March 2020, it was shut down and it stayed closed for the rest of the year. And so this, the extracts I have shown you relates to the 2020 annual report. When they published that report, they were still not reopened. They spent most of 2020 repatriating nearly 3,000 customers and processing over $21 million in refunds. But they have also sat down and had a serious think about the company's future strategy. What they started with was to examine the key drivers in the external context that they operate in. Things like people now want to collect experiences, not things. Purpose-led companies have an edge, especially in post-COVID times. We may be traveling closer to home, trust, safety, and value increasingly important, and then thinking about that digital transformation in the travel industry at the same time. And so reflecting on that context, Intrepid was able to identify 3 key areas of strategic advantage, which was that they are focused in experiential travel, they are vertically integrated across the supply chain, and they are a very purpose-driven company. So from there, they've articulated their 5 key strategic focus areas and set targets around each of these 5 areas. What I like particularly, as you can see here, is the 5 areas are interlinked. And so in this little diagram, they explain how each of these areas contribute to their aim to be the best travel company for the world. And this clarity over strategy has helped Intrepid to secure investment that in turn helped them to secure their survival. So on January 2021, they got a new investor in Genergy, Genergy being the investment firm owned by the family who owns the French sports brand Decathlon. So Julien Leclerc, the CEO of Decathlon, is now sitting on Intrepid's board. And what has come out really clearly in the press releases around this deal is that from Intrepid's point of view, the integrated report was the door opener. And from Genergy's point of view, it's that clarity over Intrepid's strategy and their commitment to their purpose that has really clinched the deal for them. So I think a really powerful story of how integrated thinking and properly applied helps with business survival. So the journey goes on, and I found this bit, what they say in their annual report, very pertinent and indeed perfect segue into the next presentation. While COVID-19 was a huge risk to the travel industry, Intrepid thinks that the long-term risk of climate change will be much worse. So definitely a key area of focus for a lot of people from now on. Before I hand over, the last section will be quite short. I just wanted to pass on a few questions that you might want to think about. And in fact, the first 3 questions are questions that I am also looking to answer through a new project that I'm just scoping right now on developing integrated thinking for CFOs. Hopefully that paper will be launched in spring next year. And so we're thinking about how can we define integrated thinking, what mindset, skills, and behaviors related to integrated thinking might be fostered through higher education, what learning and development approaches can be used to foster integrated thinking. And then finally, and more of a question for you, is how higher education institutions can benefit from embedding integrated thinking themselves, and who should be driving that. As an example, and you may be aware of better examples than this, here's a module in teaching integrated thinking in a university. This is Monash University in Australia, and they've been offering this integrative thinking in a dynamic world module for the last 3 years. And I've just set out the learning outcomes here. I thought it's very interesting because very often integrated thinking is seen as a fluffy concept. So an example of how a higher education institution has taken that idea and actually sort of put enough concrete meat around it to teach it to students. And just to leave you, especially those of you who are in research, may be interested in some of these academic literature on integrated thinking. They are all looking at actually higher education institutions who have sought to embed integrated thinking within their own organizations, not just in courses. And I think it's a very rich field, quite a virgin field to explore, and definitely worth further exploration in the years to come. As you can see in the publication years, this is most of this is coming out in the very last few years. So really looking forward to seeing where all of this is going. And with that, I'll hand over to you. I don't know whether we have time for questions or if you want to leave time for later discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, MP. Thank you for a lovely, fantastic talk. Could you maybe just stop sharing for a moment? That would be great.
Yeah.
We have a number, I think, a number of comments in the chat line, but it could be maybe that we could leave these here until Ian, you're finished your discussion, because I suspect, hoping maybe Ian, you're going to be radical and maybe say that we as accounting academics are simply not doing enough in this area. Because I believe we're not doing enough. I don't think the accounting professions are doing enough either. So we'll maybe come back to some of these points if that's okay. Is that okay, everyone? Okay, so I just want now, if we can maybe go on, Ian, to your talk. So just by way of introduction, Ian, you're Professor of Accounting and Sustainability at Birmingham Business School, and you also lead the Centre for Social and Environmental Accounting Research, and you're Director of the Lloyd's Banking Group Centre for Responsible Business. So you're really very involved in this agenda. Just to let individuals know, the Lloyd's Banking Group, the objective of that centre is to enable businesses to escape from the limiting, often self-destructive consequences of intentional and unintentional irresponsibility. I like that. You've been researching this area, Ian, for about 30 years now. You have been involved in a huge number of research areas, from cleaner technology to salmon fishing, sustainability indicators, government policy, climate change, and also effective pedagogy, which is brilliant. You're currently working on carbon accountability and operationalizing the SDGs for business and responsible outcome measurement of that. Just to let you note that Ian is also the co-author of Urgent Business and a report called Net Zero Accounting for a Net Zero UK. If you want, maybe Ian, we could put a link to those reports in the chat line as you're doing your talk. You've also been called as an expert reviewer for many different government organisations, including the Scottish Parliament. You've also worked with the Sustainability Development Commission, the Princess Charity, etc. And delighted to see that you're a board member for a number of charities who have sustainability at their heart, as it were. So Ian, I think based on that, if I could maybe hand over to you now to do your talk, that would be brilliant.
Okay, thank you so much, Joan, and thanks everyone for this opportunity to present this. I'm just trying to get my slide to work. Come on. I don't know if anyone else has this slow sort of when it goes in slow motion.
That's it. We're there now, Ian.
Can you see the slides? Is it in slideshow or?
It's not in slideshow, but don't worry if it's not. Okay,
I'll just try and get rid of it. I'll carry on, because there's nothing worse than sitting around trying to see somebody be so ineffectual and unable to work their PowerPoint slides. So anyway, I've just got a big huge zoom thing over my menu where I can't actually get access to it. So I do apologize. Come on.
Try pressing F11, see if that works.
F11. No.
Sorry.
No, it's yeah.
The escape button? No.
I don't know. I'll stop sharing and I'll come back in again.
Do you want me to share them from my computer?
It should work okay. It's let's try. It's done it again. Why are you doing this? I've not got the wee thing down the bottom. This is really irritating. Right. Okay. I've got lovely animation and everything you're not going to be able to see. So it's like.
You want me to share them, Ian? No.
I know. I just need to get rid of the stupid Zoom. Because the menu normally this menu goes away. Anyway, while I am trying to sort things out, what I want to talk about quickly this afternoon is integrating carbon accounting into curriculum. Well, I've got three objectives. One is to say why. One is to communicate the results of a global survey that we undertook in relation to this to help understand what's actually happening. And then I also then want to talk about how we went about implementing it in Birmingham, how we moved towards trying to integrate climate change into our curriculum in a particular, what we call a mainstreaming way, which hopefully will become sort of like quite clear in a while as to what the difference between if you like, a mainstreaming approach and a non-mainstreaming approach in that regard. So I'm just going to go this. I just had a wee idea. There we go. Solved it. Yay, well done me. Okay, so very quickly, imagine if everything that we kind of did came with a greenhouse gas price tag as well as an economic price tag. If every decision maker was carbon sensitive and climate literate, and every decision took into account the greenhouse gas consequences of that decision, and every accountant could calculate the impact, climate impact of every decision taken within organizations. Because right now we're in a state of climate emergency, a really serious existential kind of like crisis in terms of our way of life and everything that we kind of that we value. We are genuinely sitting on a tipping point within our social, ecological, and our economic systems. And right now we really need to know what the equivalent cost of something that we do is on the climate system. We're almost kind of like we're on a trajectory that's like we've got the evidence of it in heat deaths, cold, melting kind of like ice caps, wildfires, sort of biodiversity loss, You know, I could go on like for at least a day talking about some of the consequences we're sort of facing here. So this idea that we need everything to have this idea of the consequences, I'm arguing that every decision, not just special decisions that people think have got something to do with climate change, must take account of the greenhouse gas consequences that impact on climate. Every decision maker has to now become carbon sensitive and climate literate. And every accountant should be able to calculate the climate impact of every decision. Because if not, who is else going to do it? Right now, nothing has a definitive greenhouse gas tag. We don't even have really, to be honest, quite good, fully representative price tags. Very few decisions take account of greenhouse gas consequences. Hardly any decision makers are carbon sensitive or climate literate, and very few accountants are able to calculate the climate impact of any decision that they're involved in. However, right now, it is possible to get approximate and usable greenhouse gas kind of price tags, as well as financial price tags, for most products, services, and activities. It is possible there are methods in place for decisions to take account of greenhouse gas consequences. And it is possible for decision makers to quite quickly become carbon sensitive and climate literate. And it's possible for accountants to learn how to calculate the climate impact of any decision and integrate it into accounting systems. Because if you start to know the greenhouse gas consequences, you can start to optimize value creation in a systemic way that actually doesn't destroy the climate. In fact, if you like, you know, kind of low carbon and sort of climate sensitive options tend to be cheaper, and they tend to create more value than the more destructive way in which we're living our lives right now. It's possible to improve decisions. There's evidence which shows that when you present people with the account of the greenhouse gas consequences, the people will take it into account. And it's possible for managers to become better decision makers when they're carbon sensitive and climate literate. There's not a trade-off here. And it is possible for management accountants to calculate climate impact of any decision. If we know the company greenhouse gas emissions, we can optimize sustainable value creation. When businesses appropriately disclose the greenhouse gas consequences of their action, then stakeholders become better decision makers. People are better able to govern, control, and engage with these businesses. They need to become carbon sensitive and carbon literate too. And it's possible for financial accountants to calculate and disclose the climate impact of a business. Because right now, everyone needs to know an organization's greenhouse gas emissions as well as their financial performance. Everyone needs organizations to appropriately disclose their greenhouse gas consequences. And everyone needs to improve their decision making and become more carbon sensitive or climate literate. And everyone needs accountants to calculate the climate impact and the climate risks of different organizations. Everything we do has some impact on past, present, and future greenhouse gas emissions. Nobody is exempt from this, and nobody is exempt from the kind of like the crisis that we're actually there. Certain people are more exposed. Who's more exposed? It's not a surprise. Who are the people who are exposed to climate risks? It's the marginalized, it's the people who are at the bottom end of the income spectrum. They are people who are living in marginalized communities, in sort of like in dangerous and risky communities. Okay, this is not just a kind of an environmental crisis, it's a social crisis. There's stuff like, there's climate racism, there's climate injustice, there's climate inequality. So there's many kind of issues to there, but nobody is exempt from it. You can't sort of like get in a spaceship and blast off and save yourself from this thing here, because it's just simply not there. Important to realize we're on a trajectory. It's a slow-moving ecological system. Carbon dioxide hangs around in the atmosphere for 3,000 years. Stuff we're doing now is affecting the kind of like the planet for a long period of time. Our actions and decisions impact on the greenhouse gas. We basically create a kind of like it's like a duvet. We're wrapping the planet in a kind of a duvet, and the thicker, the more togs there are in that duvet, the thicker the blanket, less heat can escape, and the warmer our planet becomes. And what's different is that when it comes to planetary kind of like temperatures, warmer is not better. Warmer is more volatile. Warmer is destructive. And we're approaching these dangerous tipping points where things start to kind of go what we call runaway climate change. And we're not very far away from this. And the science has been telling us this for a long time. The real question is, why on earth are we not actually doing things? And this is not some theoretical kind of future orientated thing. Right now, climate change is impacting directly on costs, liabilities, asset valuation, the ability of a business to pay debts and dividends, the production capacity, capital investments, market values, pricing, goodwill, tax, supply chain, value chain, the kind of future sales, insurance premium, going concerns, interest rates, you name it. Right now, climate change is having an actual material impact on these different components. And for some industries, this is actually kind of like the one driving kind of feature. And for other sectors, it is the ultimate bottleneck for any expansion and any threat that's actually going on. Many businesses are at risk of going out of business because of their climate impact right now. Concepts such as carbon insolvency, where a business is likely to not have a future unless it radically changes its business model and its way of working. Now, I will share these slides, but these are just some examples of institutions who are actively engaging in climate kind of like carbon accounting, climate kind of related things. I could click on every single one of them. We've got the English Institute, we've got CIMA, we've got ACCA, we've got the stock exchange, we've got leading businesses, we've got energy companies, we've got the climate accord, we've got the governments, we've got all of the big four are actually doing stuff. Like there's BlackRock, and there's also a plethora of different accounting standards by which things are actually going on, and locally driven initiatives where people are actually trying to do something about climate change. This is not the future. This is the now. Right now, every UK business, large business, not just a corporation, regardless of how, has to disclose its annual greenhouse gas emissions. To be listed in the FTSE stock exchange, you need to disclose your greenhouse gas emissions. To be listed on any of the major stock exchanges, you have to do it. If you're a financial institution, you have to comply with Bank of England requirements and stress tests and scenarios that are drawn on the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. The Bloombergs, the Reuters, the Refinitiv, all these different things are demanding carbon disclosure information as part of theirs. And right now there is a huge kind of like bun fight over who gets to determine the power to determine what type of greenhouse gas disclosures companies are required to produce. Remember, they're already required to do it in virtually every kind of like regime that controls that has kind of corporations. Okay, and as I said, it's interesting that the professional accountancy bodies are also kind of like taking a lead in this one here. There's a big problem, right? Excuse the kind of the French or the Scots, but most greenhouse gas accounting that actually is done is nonsense. It's crap, right? It's actually inappropriate for the problems that are actually there. That often what we're finding with our research is that people are picking off the shelf a greenhouse gas accounting system, they're applying it to an option, it's throwing out some numbers that people don't know that they believe will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, when the reality is they actually increase global greenhouse gas emissions. And this includes governments. This includes kind of major serious players, people who should know better. But what we're finding, if you don't get the greenhouse gas accounting right, you've got serious problems because it's distorting there. In fact, it's more than distorting, it's actually incentivizing climate riskier options. And there's a huge kind of problem that we actually have here, that the competencies are not there and people are doing things wrong. So Joan said, kind of like, you know, do you want to challenge people? Yes, I want to challenge people. Here's a challenge, and I've said this to my own institution and lots of places I go, and included in sort of like SEMA and a range of different settings. Right now, what carbon accounting competencies or capacities do your students have when they kind of like, or do they possess on graduation? We are responsible, professionally, ethically, morally, for how we educate things. We saw that very clearly in the first slide of the first presentation. We are sitting now with like in a climate crisis, a climate emergency. Country after country after country and region and institution are declaring climate emergencies. We know that this is something that needs evidence, that needs quantification, that needs kind of investment. Yet what are we doing as a community to educate our students, to prepare them to actually to do this? Because they will be and they are being asked to actually to do this. Climate emergency has been around for 30 years. What are we doing? How good are our students? Okay, how well have we trained them to actually do this? Have we untrained them so that they're kind of ignorant of this sort of thing? We've told them it's not their responsibility, either explicitly or kind of like, or by our actions, by our silence in this sort of thing here. I think we have a kind of a massive responsibility to fix this, and we can fix it. Okay. Because right now, accounting is inadvertently fueling the climate crisis. The way, not just the carbon accounting, but mainstream conventional accounting incentivizes climate change, right? It really does. There's a bias within the way in which we do it in accounting, which actually leads people to make decisions, either kind of like either through ignorance or through design, to pick options that increase climate risk, put more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, destroy the systems that actually are responsible for taking carbon and other gases out of the atmosphere and actually regulating planetary systems. Right now, we have a kind of a hidden climate curriculum in accounting that actually is promoting climate change. And we need to urgently decarbonize our kind of like our curriculum in accounting. Okay. Yeah, I'll try and calm down a little bit now. So, but this is serious, people. This is something where, you know, I think inaction is no longer acceptable. And I have been sort of like, and myself and others have been talking about this for quite a long time, and we are actually seeing some changes. So what's interesting is that it's not that it can't be done, and it's not that it's not being done. It's just not being done kind of sufficiently widespread. Now, as part of the run up to COP26, which is a really important kind of like, I think hopefully it'll be a watershed in this relations, following on from Paris Accord, which was in 2015. And we're on the run up to COP27, which is really interesting because as accountants, we should be concerned because it's now the climate stocktake that's actually required. The next one is where the numbers are really going to start to kind of kick in and stuff like that. And it was part of the run up to there. myself and some colleagues, John Ferguson, Kirsty Holstead, Shona Russell, Laurie Lee Davis, they're all based up at St Andrews, working through CSER, which Joan mentioned before, along with John Wilson, who some of you may know, who runs the Centre for Responsible Banking and Finance up there, funded by the Royal Society of Edinburgh. We basically undertook a global survey, a multi-language global survey into are we teaching this right now? And then if where are people teaching it, and what are the challenges and the possibilities for actually transforming this in that regard? This is actually part of other initiatives which are going on in higher education, the Education for Sustainable Development initiatives, along with climate change education initiatives. We are actually collaborating with the UN Prime, people who are actually pushing, they're trying to kind of mainstream responsible management education. So we're very much kind of drawing on this this movement that it's there. So we're not seeing accounting and finance as any way separate. It's part of this overall movement. And what we wanted to do was to see the extent to which these other initiatives and the lessons that have been learned from this mainstreaming are actually kind of like feeding into accounting already. And also recognizing the rise in carbon literacy and training outside the formal curriculum, because again, sad as it may seem, practice is slightly ahead of us in the academic world. We're lagging behind it. We often see ourselves as researchers, as leading, as kind of like as lead indicators, as institutions creating kind of like knowledge, creating kind of research, leading the field, and practice following after us. And that is in some disciplines, but certainly in relation to sustainability and accounting, sorry, we're lagging well behind on what's actually kind of like happening, which is slightly worrying, even though we've got a large body of research, which is actually kind of can inform and does inform practice as well. But teaching is lagging behind. So when we looked at this survey, we were looking at where does it feature in accounting, and I'm saying accounting education, it's accounting and finance education, but just to make things easier and less words on the page, using accounting in its generic sense in that way. I know that'll upset some finance people, but hey, I'm sure I've upset a lot of people already. What's driving and shaping efforts to teach climate change in accounting? What competencies should students develop through this education? What challenges do they face? What do they understand by it? And how might accounting education enhance general carbon literacy and competencies, and actually trying to make a contribution to the climate emergency? So as I said, a global survey, it was distributed around a range of networks. Heavily, we kind of used, we were looking for people who are doing things and not doing things. Fair to say that whilst we went out for the EAA, we had kind of BAFA, we had a range of different mailing lists. We had John's Responsible Business Finance Network, we had the CSER network and things like that. So we were there. We were, if you like, the responses are not representative. Okay, hands up on that one. It's highly kind of imbalanced, if you like, by CSER membership. So that the Centre for Social Environment Accounting, but it was only 56% of the respondents were CSER. So it's only about half. So we actually we did get a range. We also got a range of different countries. So again, you can see in the globe there. Apologies, it looks like New Zealand has slipped off the kind of edge there with some bad editing on my part. It's certainly on my screen. It should be there. You can see we've actually had a broad range of responses. Partially that was enhanced by having a multi-language version of it. So we had Portuguese, we had French, we had Italian, we had Chinese, different versions of kind of like Chinese as well. So we tried to kind of like get different languages to actually do this, and that was really encouraging when we actually see the responses that we get, which is good. It gives us a kind of a global feel, but not enough to get a global picture. But what was interesting in the responses that we got, 97% of them indicated a personal commitment to matters relating to climate change. The same amount, 97%, said that we should educate students about issues related to climate change. And 81% reported teaching some form of climate change in their accounting and finance courses. So again, we're getting lots of things. The N, if you like, was 134. So we're talking about 100 institutions around the world already teaching this in a reasonably comprehensive way. Okay, including countries in Africa, you know, kind of like South and Central America, and across the globe. You can see there from the map. Few key insights. The climate change is often located within optional social environmental accounting modules. We tried to find some kind of relationship, but what we found was the people more likely to teach it were committed, networked individuals who were part of, you know, kind of like networks such as BAFA, such as European Accounting Association, part of the APIRA network, part of CSER, that they were kind of like committed individuals who were driving things forward, and actually they weren't waiting for institutional initiatives, they were taking the initiative themselves. There was a focus on technical and scientific literacies. And what we found was professional accreditation was neither a barrier or a driver of climate change education in this regard. We'll maybe come back, I suspect we'll come back to that in the discussion. We also included in the design of this questionnaire and in the dissemination and in all of the discussions, professional accountancy bodies. We had IFAC, ICW, and CIMA who were kind of participated in it. They noted that they had it within their accreditation curriculum, but not everybody noticed that. That was interesting. So there was like, there's something going on there. Most of what we found was what we call piggybacking, where if you like, the climate change topic was kind of smuggled in. We found this word smuggled into mainstream courses. So there were, you know, a series of lectures on it. There was a few examples of specialist MSCs in sort of like climate change accounting, climate change finance. There's about 3 or 4 of them. And then there was about 1 or 2 examples of mainstreaming where you've actually integrated these into the curriculum. Where was it covered? So again, if we look at this, so if we look at about 57% of it was covered in specific sustainable accounting courses or corporate social responsibility courses. A much smaller percentage included it in their kind of mainstream management accounting and financial accounting, but some of you may find these figures a little bit high. So we're sort of like talking about in this sample, we were found that it was actually already integrated into mainstream courses. We start to drop an awful lot further when we look at corporate governance, research methods, contemporary issues. Contemporary, that's a weird one. Like, how more contemporary issue can you get than climate change? Yet it's not something that's actually in there. Risk, financial reporting. Some of you who are looking ahead, you're going, wait a minute, Ian, there's not that many finance in there, is there? No, because they're sitting way off the pace, if you like, in terms of, as is audit, corporate finance, valuation, capital markets, way down about 3%. So we can see that the things that are there, our respondents did note that a third of them, they integrated in more than one subjects. There was an indication that many people were beginning to want to introduce it into there, and then some of it were only 13% as a climate change. It was more present in undergraduate programs and masters, but despite all this, there's a strong possibility that even in these institutions, often that students may not encounter any climate-related topics through their degree program, depending on the choice of options. So what topics were covered? So we can see that there's a range of kind of topics there about disclosure, sustainable development goals, kind of business models. Then we're moving into kind of carbon accounting, footprinting, climate governance, and there again, quite high percentages. And then other ones which I think are interesting, because these are often regarded as the drivers and the consequences and the costs of climate change, which you get from other ones about planetary boundaries, biodiversity, social injustice, inequality, climate change, waste, water. Again, much lower kind of like coverage of these topics, very much an accounting kind of like capture of this agenda, which is, again, not necessarily unexpected. It's the natural intersection between accounting. And then we have these other sort of like social issues, products, services, land use, and decolonization. These do not map the scientific risks and the scientific impact of what's actually going on. So there is a sort of distortion between the priorities that's coming from the science, the risks that are actually attacking kind of planets and institutions. They're kind of, we've got these things inverted in a way. So there is, even though we're doing stuff, it's being kind of like approached in a very much a different way, starting with the accounting rather than starting with the climate change. When we look at some of the obstacles, what was interesting was that there was actually remarkably few obstacles. There was a lot of comments on, I just went and did it. I didn't necessarily tell anyone, but we did get some kind of like patterns that, you know, that were coming up. That there was some kind of problems with the lack of knowledge and uncertainty on the topic, and particularly knowing what these competencies should be, how to actually go about doing it. How do we do this? In particular, concerns about what would be the appropriate way to teach this, and also to assessment. The assessment came up quite heavily, and that's come up before within sustainable accounting. The old story is that it's time, you know, the resources was an issue. Time needed to prepare the material. There was a lack of resources available for teaching, that there was a lack of capacity to develop knowledge and understanding. What was interesting was it was not seen as a low priority. It was just, it wasn't like saying, oh, we should be doing other things. They're basically saying that we just don't have time really for anything. From the institutional perspective, again, there was very few barriers placed in the institutions about what they've actually done, and often that there was support from head of school. There was all sorts of reference to strategies and things like that. Very few institutions are sort of saying, hands up, we support climate change, we support destroying the planet. Most organizations say we want to, you know, we've got targets and stuff like that. And so therefore the institution itself was not actually a barrier, and in many cases was a kind of a motivator. The profession, kind of practice, again, this was not seen as there. You know, there was very low, we put in things like climate change is considered irrelevant to accounting and finance. Again, very small number of people saw that as a barrier. They were actually kind of like disagreeing with this. It was kind of, you know, other accreditation pressures. No, wasn't actually kind of like a major barrier. Doesn't fit with accreditation. Again, very low numbers, because it actually aligns with accreditation requirements if you look hard enough. One of the biggest ones was this perception that students didn't know about it and didn't care. Now that's a really interesting one, and we're going to follow that up with kind of further research in this one here, in that this was the biggest obstacle. They said students don't want to learn about it. Okay. And I think that was often maybe putting the barrier on, but still only 35%. I'm sorry, I'm conscious of time that's kind of running here. These are just talking about the different aspects of kind of like climate change that everyone thought they should be actually doing it. I think there's a couple of interesting ones there, that 93% thought that accounting students should be able to measure and report greenhouse gas emissions. as well as been understanding kind of the drivers and how the things actually went on. Again, very high level of support in relating to saying we should be looking at links with biodiversity. We should be recognizing that it's man-made. We need to kind of we look at our ideologies, our viewpoints, our norms are actually kind of responded to. How we can actually do risk assessments, the link with science, transformation, and even high levels of the idea that indigenous knowledge is valuable for climate change and traditional ways of actually doing things. And even sort of getting down to these different components. These components, by the way, come from education for sustainable development and climate change education. So we're actually seeing high levels of support for a lot of these different kind of issues. Interestingly, a relatively low level of in terms of designing green financial instruments. We want to dig down in that because that might be that some people don't think it's a desirable thing to do because of the nature of it. Okay, so a few of our conclusions. Piggybacking, the way it's been done just now may not be sufficient. Okay, is not going to be sufficient. This is because it's other authors. My take is it's not sufficient to actually kind of fulfill our responsibility in educating future professionals and future citizens who are doing this. I think that the mainstreaming won't happen by chance. It actually needs active engagement on a collaborative basis using institutions like professional accountancy bodies as well as organizations like BAFA. And I think that there's other ways we really need to kind of sort of get kicking right into a serious kind of piece of research and engagement into how we can actually do this. Drawn on Bebbington's kind of really nice work on ecological literacy, the work on decolonization, and the need to decarbonize what's actually going on right now. Okay, final bit. So this is a kind of a survey. What I want to talk about now is what we try to do in Birmingham, Birmingham Business School. We've just launched what we call CANS. Thanks to Tom Cookston for coming up with those initials, which is Carbon Accounting for Net Zero Future. And what this is the we stand to be corrected or challenged here, but I think this is the first institution in the world to integrate and mainstream climate change throughout its accounting program. Where we actually I'll talk about what that actually means. So it's not just a kind of a few lectures. It's actually a systematic approach built on a vertically integrated syllabus where we kind of place climate change in the appropriate kind of part of all of our modules, all of our compulsory modules, and about 90% of our optional modules in our kind of degree in accounting. Okay, so we're accountants. How do you start off trying to do stuff? Well, we did an audit. We looked at, do we teach this? This is the results of 2021. We did this in 2019 and 2018 as well. So this is, I think we're launching it, but we're now, I think, in about 2.5 years down the line. So we were originally trying to launch this for the first COP26 that got cancelled because of COVID. And now we are kind of running it for our first years right now with catch-ups with our second and third years. But the first year students are running through there. So what did we find? It was already taught. There was no sense of progression, whether it was taught in first year, second year, or third year. It could actually be more advanced stuff in first year, and in third year it was there. There was no problem. There was lots of overlaps, and there was lots of topics that were missed. There was a desire for us to include these things, but what we found, like the global survey, was much of this was dependent upon the individual characteristics and module leaders and people who were actually teaching things. Okay, so we thought, well, this is not really good. So what we did was we then sat down as a department. Okay, this was very much a department initiative. I will put my hands up and says, yeah, I was one of the sort of like the people to prod the department in a departmental meeting where I basically went, hey folks, we're not doing nearly enough in relation to climate change. We should do something. And we should do something fast, and we should do something effective. And then we had a good kind of discussion round in the department. And it was then we kind of moved into this collective thing. So yes, we should be doing something. What should we do? And we had really good discussions about what to do. And then basically people kept saying, well, what is it we want? So one of the things that we did was we said, okay, let's do this like we would do any other topic. Let's get a syllabus. Let's get some outcomes. Let's get a program. Let's break it down into topics and let's map it out across the kind of the fields. And we did this collectively. Admittedly, we did it collectively. We were led by the wonderful kind of like Madeline Savatsky and Maya, who absolutely ran with it. And they were early career researchers, first job out of kind of like PhDs, leading this program in a sort of like in a well-established department. And what we did was we then identified kind of skills and competencies in relation to this. We articulated it so that we could actually then people could work around it. And we actually set objectives. You know, again, you can see this first, the ability to connect science with climate change, with accounting, concepts, tools, and information. And fourth, this is really important, not to just say this is about teaching people how to do things, but we also want to teach people to critically engage carbon accounting and meaningful engage in carbon accounting debates and practice, not just to become technicians, but to be fully educated to degree level in this. It's drawn on the strength that we have in Birmingham in sort of like critical studies and critical theory. We identified the benefits. This scribble is how it all kind of like it all connects into the different modules that we actually have. The green lines are where we've got carbon accounting and how it fits into decision making and control, financial accountability in first year, all the way up to kind of management accounting, auditing, sort of like theory practice, advanced kind of like corporation, financial statement analysis, public sector, taxation. We kind of like got it there. And we also, to help with the students, we articulated this to them. We also, we use this in our offer day holders kind of like sessions with our students as well. We identify clear progression in this syllabus. Familiarize yourself with the concepts, international government, key policy, introduce kind of roles of accountant and accountants. Second year, introducing kind of techniques and decision making, external reporting, carbon markets, then linked to kind of like contemporary management and financial accounting concerns and literature. And then the third year is about in-depth understanding and critical engagement with these things, nuanced discussions about opportunities and critiques, okay, of what's actually going on. We have a series of classic stuff. You know, by the end of the program, students should be able to. Again, you know, I'll skip these. I want to maybe just to finish on some of the challenges that we encountered on this way. The first thing was the whole creation of this vertically integrated syllabus was because when we first started it off was how do we coordinate this between modules and across all 3 years? We're a big department. We've got this is a big program. And so therefore it was really important that we had a document and we had a map that people could then do it. One of our basic principles was that this climate change should not dominate, it should not colonize the individual topics. It should be appropriate to the subject. It should be adjusted into the pedagogy of the kind of like of the academic lead in that process. And it should actually flow, kind of flow with the topic. It shouldn't be seen as a drop-in. So when we're talking about taxation, it's part of the taxation. When it's part of audit and assurance, it's part of that process. And we use the same kind of language to sort of like to mainstream it in these things. We also have a problem at Birmingham about coordination across multiple locations, because we have sites in Singapore and we also teach in Dubai. So we needed to kind of make sure we included all those people in there. How we resolved this was by having kind of like group meetings and discussions. There was a problem with kind of changing module leads. This is one of these things about, you know, people getting swapped in to do different topics. And we always have that in busy departments. So again, that was a problem. So that's why we wanted to have a structure that people could then see how it fit in and choose and take stuff with them in there. Working with the confines of existing programs, there was some discussion on that, but actually we opened the discussion up and we exposed the kind of like the accreditation, the climate change. We did some research on climate change accreditation requirements, and actually we found that this was really quite straightforward. This was one which was identified in the early discussions as a problem, but actually ceases to be a problem. Getting buy-in from our colleagues, that just involved general conversations and not about imposing things, but actually just having good, honest discussions at team meetings, at departmental meetings, at seminars and stuff like that. To be honest, I can come on to this as well. In terms of our structure at Birmingham, we have a separate accounting department and finance department. We have control, much more control in the accounting department of this. We have had limited success with the finance department, but again, that's not there. We're much higher percentages of inclusion in finance than the 3% and 5% that we're seeing in other institutions. And this other one about making people feel confident in carbon accounting related issues. So how did we kind of do? So what we did was we had clear learning outcomes. Right, this kind of like for the verticalated program across these things, and then we map them onto the different kind of like module outcomes. Okay, that was really important. That was a step change. I can't remember. I think it might have been Madeline that said we need a document, and this vertically integrated syllabus was the thing, and everybody, it was co-produced by people within the department. And that was a really good exercise. Anyone looking at this is something you should do. We created a sort of like our carbon accounting expert group, okay, who were not all experts in carbon accounting at the beginning, but we actually sort of like brought them together so people could actually do this. We developed and shared carbon accounting teaching material and made them available to all members of department. What was really encouraging is that sort of like, particularly some of our new colleagues came and actually were designing their own case studies. They were adapting case studies into this bit here. We had topic workshops. So we had an audit group, we had a tax group, we had a management accounting group, and we set up kind of like question and answers and sort of like little expert groups where people could discuss these different things and actually come up with solutions, share these different things. And a kind of a series of ongoing support for people there. Okay, so I've gone slightly over time. This slide here is just there's some examples of there. We've got some reports. If you click on the links to the kind of the book, we've got sort of a series of lectures. So we've got about four lectures that are available, short 10-minute lectures that people can potentially download. I think the web page is under repair right now, but if you kind of check on Monday or Tuesday, you should be able to start getting them. We're hoping to build up to about 20 different things. There's also reports, there's press releases and stuff that you can all download. I will stop there and move into the next stage.
Okay, Ian, thanks very much. That was really, really interesting, and I'm sure there are some questions in the chat line or the chat function, but I think maybe just thank you very much, everyone. So I mean, I find that really interesting about, you're challenging and then you're saying, well, here's how we did it. And I think it's fantastic, and hopefully the resources in there will be of value to us all. I think we'll maybe go and have our coffee break now, because people maybe are a little bit tired. So if we could aim to be, it's 14:49 on my computer, hopefully it's the same in yours. So if we could be back at say 3:05. Is that okay? So come back at 3:05, and then we'll maybe start off we'll see if you'd like to start off by getting into your breakout groups immediately, or if you'd like to maybe ask some questions. Maybe better to go into the breakout rooms, actually have the discussion of the 2 questions. But before we do that, we'll see you here first of all. Okay, so see you at 5:05. Hello, everyone. Is everybody back?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so Fred, I got your message. We will be sending the slides out. So
yeah, thanks, Joan. I'm sorry I missed the first part of the discussion. I couldn't quite get here.
that's okay. That's okay. So we're going to get into our breakout rooms now, and we're going to ask or consider 2 questions. One, how can I promote the sustainability agenda within my department? And 2, what resources do I need to embed sustainability in my teaching? So if we maybe, Sarah's going to put us into breakout rooms now, and we'll be out there for about 25 minutes at most, Sarah?
That's fine. I can do
and
a
then-
reminder in a bit. So I'll set a timer on there. But
Okay, it would be good in your breakout rooms if you could kind of nominate one person who could maybe feed back from each of the groups on these 2 questions. Thank you.
maybe other questions are in the chat, and I'll assign you all. I've got 4. I'm going to do 4 rooms and 5 rooms.
Five rooms.
5
I
rooms,
think,
and then we
yeah.
apologies if all the committee members are all in the same one, but we'll try and come back in and out as required. So see you in a wee while. So I think
Hang on again. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you've had some time to consider the 2 questions. So I suppose really if we take the first question, which is how can you promote the sustainability agenda in your department? If we could maybe just have some feedback from some of the groups, if you want to maybe just volunteer yourself turn by turn. Okay,
I'm happy to
Siobhan?
go. I was with group 2, and I'm sure they'll put me right if I don't include everything. One of the first things we decided is that in order to promote the state sustainability agenda in the department, that you either need the full support of the head of department, or to have a hero or a champion who would be able to take it forward. And in fact, we decided that maybe just one champion wasn't enough, that you would actually need more than that. And we talked about how lucky that Ian was in Birmingham, where he seems to have a whole team of people who are very engaged and doing lots of research on this particular topic. I can't say it's the same for us in Lincoln, although as the 4 of us who were in the meeting just now, we know that it's going on in pockets of modules.
Mm-hmm.
So, but not so much at undergraduate, potentially maybe more at postgraduate, but
Yes.
that varies. But certainly with the promotion, that's allied to the resources. And one of the resources that was suggested by Liz was that maybe CDAF could put on some actual training in this area, because it's okay to say, yes, we're passionate about it, we'd love to do it, but do we actually know what it is that we need to do to communicate this to students, the how, in other words?
Yes.
So one of the problems, and if I move on now to question 2, one of the problems was that there's little scaffolding. There's little happens at level 1 or 2, and most of the teaching was going on at level 3 with respect to sustainability in either, for us, it's in financial reporting, advanced financial reporting and advanced management accounting. So more training, more resources. And I think, folks, that's about it. Oh, another thing was suggested that sometimes it's very difficult to include it in the syllabus when you're potentially constrained by exemptions and then all the other demands on the syllabus.
I have to push back on that straight away.
No, I knew you would say that, Ian.
Because it's going to become a requirement for exemptions now.
Good. Yeah, and that's,
you know, I mean, it's
reason.
like it's most people, right? And I've done it for years because people have always said, "Oh, it's for exemptions," and I've just said, "Okay, prove it to me. Show me the stuff. It's there." And most people who talk about exemptions don't know what the requirements are.
Good, excellent.
That's fine. Yeah, I think that's about it from us, Joan.
Well, I think that's excellent. So head of department and the champion, there's some pockets of it going on. I agree. I think that something like the train the trainer kind of model, I put a reference into that earlier. I think we do need that actually. And then the thing about the scaffolding and Ian, what you outlined in terms of doing the audit and how it progresses from one year to the next is really quite important. And then you're right, pushing against the exemptions argument. I think that's something we all have to do because it's not just sustainability, but even if we're talking about critical thinking or research, or everybody says the same, oh, we've got too much to do for exemptions. And I would totally challenge that. I think Anne-Marie, you'd be the same. You totally challenge all of that stuff as well. So what about another group? If you could give us feedback on the 2 questions, anything maybe slightly different to what Siobhan's group has said?
Shall I say a few things from group 1?
Yes, Lisa?
Yeah. So I think really with question 1, we actually focus a little bit more on challenges and concerns at how we can develop this. And probably in common with a lot of the groups, we noted, we feel we have a lack of experience, a lack of knowledge, and it makes academics feel very uncomfortable, I think. So this leads to a resource issue that we feel like we don't particularly need financial resources for any of this. It's having time to develop our knowledge, develop our awareness, having time to really sit and think, like Ian has done at Birmingham, how can we change our programs? How can we embed things in? And we all know how long it takes to make these changes in a university. Even changing a module, let alone changing a program, is very, very, very time consuming. And again, having that support, I think, of your senior management in the department is absolutely crucial. One thing I did mention, which I've personally experienced, is actually I've found that some students have a bit of fatigue and a bit of boredom of sustainability issues. It's almost as if sometimes it's just rammed down their throats a little bit. It's in every module, and I'm not sure if every module leader is talking about the same kind of things, but I've certainly...
Do you ram down neoliberalism, capital markets, the efficiency down them as well?
Well, very, very possibly. I'm giving you the students' voice here. The students are saying sometimes they've had enough of it. It's in every module, and actually they'd rather focus on some... This is the student saying it, not me, proper accounting. So I think there is an issue that it has to be properly thought through and properly embedded in, so it all makes sense and it's all cohesive. I think that is one of the challenges, which leads to that resource issue of having the time to do it properly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Lisa, anything else you want to say? Is that okay? Brilliant. So there's two of the groups are raising this idea of lack of experience and knowledge, and academics feeling uncomfortable that maybe don't know what they're doing. I was going to ask Ian, has CSER got any plans to help in this area? Would they get involved and train the trainers, do you think?
Absolutely. We've already been running a series of workshops on carbon literacy. We're on our sort of like our third one, so it's all, you know, kind of promote through different kind of networks and stuff like that. And maybe some people have been on it, but we, you know, we kind of launched the report. We've had panels with professional accountancy, but it's recorded and things like that. So we've got a program, so we're likely to be having sort of one every kind of couple of months on this one. So it's now kind of like a Caesar kind of initiative and program, and we're going to hold in most of our we're going to have a kind of a climate kind of like education bit and all of our conferences and various things like that, and try and get into all the other conferences and bits like that. So
Yeah, I suppose there's a job of work there to promote and raise awareness within colleagues at BAFA and EAA, etc., the AAA maybe, that this is going on. Yeah, I think that would be very worthwhile. And then, Lisa, you did mention the student fatigue, and that could be a function of that they don't buy into it. So it's getting them to buy into it. So maybe that's a function of this has to really be integrated at the very start so that they can see this.
Can I also say that that often that impression is actually given from our fellow lecturers who say that this isn't proper accounting.
Yes.
It's not often not the student's voice. It's actually it's people who often don't want to, to sort of change the way in which they do things. You know. And because I've had that all the time, you know, even things, you know, sort of theoretical approaches students say, and you go, how do you know? How many years have you worked as a finance director? You know, it's sort of like.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, if accountants aren't prepared to take this challenge on, we're really going to be in a sticky wicket. So it's our children's future and our grandchildren and our great grandchildren. I think we have to. It's like the president of Ukraine. I don't know if you saw. He had not digressing here, but he had a fantastic thing he said there in one of his talks. He said he doesn't want for politicians to have his picture on the wall to be, you know, adorned like some sort of hero. He said, put your own children's pictures on the wall, and every time you make an important decision, think about your children. Maybe we need to have a bit more of that. Anyway, thank you. Perfect. Okay, now what about another group then?
I can feedback on group 4, Joan.
Excellent, Darren.
And in sticking with the theme of students, we had a view that in terms of the promotion, that students should be included in that, and also you know, potentially students should be consulted on the building of these areas into modules and into the syllabus. But we have to be careful. I'm just talking from my own experience now. I have to be careful that we don't assume that students already know about this, and we don't assume that they're particularly interested in it either. And my own experience with running a simulation that has lots of sustainability issues and options within it is that very few students take those sustainability options in running their business. That could be as a result of the fact that they haven't been taught about it anywhere else. So there's a lack of awareness, you know, I don't know quite why. So there was this thought that students perhaps should be included. We thought any promotion needs to be coordinated so that we don't get mixed messaging anywhere across the development of modules or the promotion of the subject area. And we really liked the vertical integration model that Ian was talking about, and Parminder's already working on that at Derby. We also had an interesting discussion about whether we need to be experts in the field or not. And there was a little bit of variation. So my own feeling was that we didn't really need to be experts in carbon literacy or sustainability issues necessarily. We need to be experts in the accounting treatment and the accounting use of those things, but we can't be experts in everything. But what we do need is to be able to tap into expertise where where we can, and use perhaps experts to help us in building some of the things into modules. But we definitely need an enhanced awareness, perhaps, rather than an expertise necessarily. We also felt that critical to the whole promotion of this thing is that you've got to believe in it. And there's no point trying to promote it if you don't actually believe in it yourself. And that got us onto a discussion around whether this should come from a university level or whether it should come from a departmental level or faculty level. And there was a feeling that sometimes when something is really pushed at a university level, that actually it almost starts to create a bit of resentment because you're being told what to do, I suppose, a natural human reaction. And also people just doing what was needed to tick the box to tell the university they'd done it, rather than necessarily believing in it and taking that belief into the change in the modules. In terms of resources, we tended to focus on resources that, you know, positive view resources rather than a negative view. So Parminder mentioned that she'd already had a look at the CSER website and said there were some fantastic resources on there, including some case studies. Toyi was very keen on the use of case studies and has used case studies in her teaching for a long time. So thought that the promotion of writing of case studies within this area would be really useful. So there was a thought that we could potentially develop some of our own case studies, but also a really interesting idea was to get guest speakers who we would normally invite into the classroom to talk about stuff to write us some short case studies of their organisations and what they're doing or what they think they should be doing or what they're not doing or what went wrong when they did something in this area. And whether, you know, we have lots of employers nowadays who are very keen to get involved with universities and tell us what sort of graduates they want. Maybe they would be keen enough to contribute materials in some sort of way.
Excellent.
So those are the things that we discussed.
Yeah, Darren, thanks. That's really comprehensive. I just wanted to pick up on one thing. I'd be interested, Ian, in what your views are on this. I think there's a perfect opportunity at the minute, you know, for all of us to push this agenda really forward, because at the university level, the universities have grabbed onto the SDGs like nothing that I've seen before. And I don't know about your universities, but all they seem to be simply doing is collecting a lot of data about how we as academics are trying to implement the SDGs. Would this not provide a really good reason why we should engage in this, like a proper initiative that will actually lead to something? I mean, what do you think, Ian, or am I talking nonsense?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I've always used university statements and university mission statements and actually used them as the justification for including things like sustainability and different ways of kind of different pedagogy in the process. And I think that the SDGs, I mean, we, as part of the carbon literacy thing, we also did a we did a content analysis of the UN Prime reports, particularly of kind of Prime champions, and looked at the extent to which things like SDGs and different things were penetrating through. And it was actually remarkably poor. And I think there's going to be a push back against the way in which some of these things are actually doing. But it's perfect. It's a really, really good, the SDGs are a really nice way to articulate sustainability, and in particular breaking it down into how you can have intersect. I mean, there's SDGs which are perfect for accounting.
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's like, and certainly if you look at ICW and you look at all these other institutions, they're already there. They're already there, and I think it's a really good opportunity to actually to look at this. Just on kind of Darren's point, a really good source of speakers right now, and I think it applies to anyone in the UK, is business in the community. They've got regional leadership boards. They are taking forward this as an initiative, and they've got some brilliant people who are happy to talk openly about their successes, but also in terms of their and wanting to cooperate with universities to actually, just as we're speaking, one of the largest kind of one of the largest retailers in the UK has just pinged and said, I want to be doing some stuff on Scope 3 greenhouse gas emission. We've appointed someone. Can you kind of point us to the right direction so we can actually do things? And they're kind of like, they will be more that they've already talked to our students about it. And the big four are really pushing on this as well. You know, they'll come and talk to your students about this. You know, just, you know, as you'll get folk from CIMA, ICW, ICAI, all these different people will actually do them. But they're a really good source. I kind of think of there. And talk to some of the banks. The banks are all net zero. They're all disinvesting and stuff like that. Some brilliant case studies. As have Harvard. And if you're looking for some really good simulation games, have a look at MIT Sloan. They've got about 3 or 4 really good kind of games, and we're collaborating with them and Duke and some other ones to try and get a kind of global network of kind of resources in there. And certainly Harvard are about to, I think, open up all of their case studies that they're tagging as climate change for people to actually use. And some really good ones at Ivy as well. Some really good quality case studies already out there.
Excellent. Yeah. And as you were speaking, Darren, I had written down, honestly, our companies, you know, if you get somebody to come in and talk to your students, I think not the humble pie, you know, we're brilliant at doing this. Surely you need companies to be saying, well, actually, you know what, we don't know what we're doing, or we did this and it was a mess, or we're not really, it's a tick box exercise. How can accountants help us in terms of making it more real? I think you need honesty.
They would be great. Yeah, they would be great projects for students to work on, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, that business in the community sounds good. And Sarah has just put into the chat line as well for us, the executive members. We do have some money at CDAF we have in our kind of pot, as it were. She's saying, could this be a specific bursary for CDAF? So maybe it could be something that what do you think, Ian? We could maybe allocate some monies for people proposing to write case studies in this area.
Absolutely. I think it'd be a really good use of stuff, because I mean, the thing is that often we've got case studies that we like that need a little bit developed. I mean, I was slightly embarrassed with Susanna for her great case study that won the Caesar Prize a few years ago on kind of like kind of waste and stuff like that, and that could so easily be adapted to put climate change in it with just a little bit work. And I know that CIMA have just they've just launched a case study grant writing stuff as well. So a lot of the stuff is already there. But yeah, let's get more case studies. Let's get sharing. Let's get them out there.
Could somebody maybe put in the link to all of these, the Caesar resources? I'm just looking here. Have I got it right here? I'm just thinking, just for the colleagues that don't know.
Could I hold off on
right?
We're relaunching the webpage.
Okay.
So we're just about to do a big web page relaunch, and I think it'll be a slightly different web address. So they're busy kind of scrabbling for that just now. Ian,
if you could send us that link in due course, we can send it out. In fact, Ian, what we should be doing is sending it out to the whole of BAFA.
Yeah.
And to CDAF, really should be doing this.
And we've got a Caesar Facebook page for those people who don't want to be members. If you join the Caesar Facebook page, you just go on, search Caesar, join. There's about 900 people actively kind of on that Facebook page. And so you can go in and share resources. There's lots of really good materials and initiatives and workshops and stuff going on there without having to go through the sort of like membership or anything like that. So that's kind of like the open access to people who are interested in it. So just go Facebook Caesar and you'll get there. any new developments on the webpage will be posted on there as well. So if you just go to the CSER Facebook page.
Excellent. Okay. Have you got a LinkedIn page too, Ian? Do you know?
There is. I'm not sure it works that well, but
That's okay. That's great. Social media, that was great. It's a great way of getting out to lots of people, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then, right. Okay. So Darren, thanks very much. That was excellent. And then I think we maybe another group, there must be another group still to give us some feedback. Anybody else in a different group? Karen?
Hi, hi. Yeah, I can't remember our number. I think we were group 5.
Don't worry.
We ended up talking about what we were doing and sort of encouraging each other with the things that we were doing. So I was in a group with Samuel Bertie, and he was talking about a great assignment that he's already got going in his on one of his modules, getting the students to review different companies' sustainability reporting and looking at how government policy in the particular jurisdiction affects the extent of it, whether it's just a tick box exercise for companies or whether they actually go over and further and beyond and so on. So talking about the fact that it starts small and the promotion of it sort of comes from it being successful in one place, and it then grows across the department, faculty from there. And then my own experience is when I did my interview for my current job in April last year, I did a presentation about sustainability because it's something that I am very interested in, and was really inspired by Professor Jill, oh no, her name's gone. Oh no. Atkins, yes, thank you very much. Yeah, Professor Jill Atkins at a conference a couple of years ago. And so and because my faculty know that this is an issue that's that I'm interested in, they have been encouraging me to be the champion, I suppose, to bring it into other areas in the department. And we were even talking about maybe coming up with some way of integrating our curricula, what we do with the students, with also reaching out to local SMEs so that we can actually take the knowledge that we're gaining as we're developing and actually helping SMEs to also get themselves onto that journey as well. So really we started talking about what we are doing rather than actually grasping the nettle of, so how could we promote it more? So my apologies, we didn't really answer the question properly, but it was a good discussion anyway that we had.
Well, no, I think that's Karen, that's excellent feedback you're giving us there. I mean, I think you are articulating the importance of the champion. There does need to be a person, at least one, who can help drive this forward. I was thinking about that, supporting the SMEs. There's quite a number of the business schools in the UK have just acquired the Small Business Charter.
Yes.
And that could be something that we as accountants, because it tends to be the entrepreneurship kind of end of the business drives that forward. But could that be something that we as accountants could play a role in? I don't know, Ian, what do you think of that? If that's maybe another potential to get to the smaller businesses?
I think there is. I mean, I'm just browsing over results of a kind of a YouGov survey we did on sustainability of businesses in the UK. And what's really jumping out is some of the small businesses and the new businesses are really struggling. Mm-hmm. It looks like they're struggling. And I was kind of surprised because I thought that they would actually be deeper, like they'd be kind of baked into their business plans. But what seems to be the new and the small are actually lagging behind the old and the medium, not the large, but the kind of the medium, who have actually kind of like established these things. And I think it really is work. I mean, and certainly we've been really successful. I've been sort of like working with colleagues, they're really successful about educating students, is actually giving them real examples and businesses to work with and challenges. Mm-hmm. And we actually, kind of ran a thing it was a straightforward management accounting course. And what we did was we got businesses to come in with challenges for them. And we did, I think, basically what Darren said, we asked them to, we co-wrote case studies with them. And then we got the students to present back to the people with the case studies their feedback. Not only was it brilliant learning, we also got a lot of students some very good jobs as well, because they got, I say the businesses often pick the wrong students, like as in I thought they got the solution wrong, but hey ho, that's the whole thing. But yeah, working with business, and there's some really nice examples. I think it's Oxford Brook have a charity where they get students to go and work with small institutions and sort of like charities to help do their accounting and bring in sustainability and stuff like that. You know,
do you think the issue about small and new businesses not really being able to grasp this and struggle with it is because cost is a huge thing in their minds?
I don't think it's cost. I think all of the stuff I've done is time. And it's absolutely, it's time to do things, and they're doing things. I mean, the other stuff we get from the stuff is small businesses don't ask for help, right? So you have this bizarre thing. So if you look at who they engage with, the small and the new are massively under engaging with their stakeholders. Massively compared to the other businesses. So there's like I think it's time. I think in so many of these different things, and I remember doing some studies before when people said it costs too much, and then you push them and you push them and push them and say costs too much time. We've got money, we can access money, we can access resources, we can create business cases. We just don't have the time to do it.
Ian, is that because they've started off with a business model that doesn't incorporate these things, and then they're trying to change it? So if we could educate entrepreneurs to be starting the business with this in their mind from day one.
There's a wonderful new book that will help them do that. Thank you for that. I can't find it. Where's my book?
I will be expecting commission, Ian.
There's a wonderful book called Urgent Business, which actually kind of like talks about how you can start to do these different things, which is largely the research that when Joan mentioned that, you know, being sort of like not working as purely an accountant for a while, but working in it as a kind of, you know, sustainable business.
There is also you know, if they don't do it when they're small and new, it's going to take a lot more time to do it when they're middle-aged and middle-sized, and even more to do it when they're big and old.
I think the other problem now is to do with their kind of their risk, and certainly our research is indicating that when they don't do this, they're building in failure. They're not future-proofing themselves because they're not got any resilience in place, and they can't handle sort of like disruption.
Well, I think you have raised some important points, Karen, and everybody else there, about it's not just accounting, actually, that we also, I mean, I'm thinking as you're speaking there, Darren, it's not just accounting, but it's entrepreneurship. And we sometimes do service teaching in that area. It's also about the MBA. I mean, every single one of us, all of our universities were chucking out all these hundreds and thousands of these MBAs, and a lot of them were not teaching them anything about this. So I'm going to pledge myself to teach the executive MBA some carbon accounting next year. I'll devote a week to it instead of doing something like working capital management, which I hate anyway.
I think it's worse than that. I think by our silence in relation to these things, it is actually legitimating it. So by not mentioning it, we're actually kind of like we're illegitimating these different kind of problems. We are actually teaching people how to manage and how to run things wrong.
And that could be something you, the rest of you in the room here, if you're teaching an MBA program, which I'm sure a lot of you are, that would be a really good place to be starting with some of this, and in addition to accounting degrees. Was there any other feedback from any other groups, or have we got most of them? Anybody else?
Joan, I've just got a point I wouldn't mind
Yeah.
getting people's views on it. There's been some talk about the professional bodies, and I said in the chat a little bit earlier on that if the professional bodies don't take a lead, then HE might not follow. And I take Ian's point that I don't think exemptions are necessarily a barrier, but I still don't think that in their syllabi, the professions are taking a lead on this. So while Ian was presenting, I had on another screen, I was going through the SEMA syllabus, and you know, the processes of management accounting and financial accounting, etc., they're all there in the syllabus. And so I know that we can adapt our content to be used in those processes. So for me, the most obvious example would be the balanced scorecard. Why not have a sustainability perspective or envelop that in learning perspective or something that helps your business and you set KPIs, targets, etc. But there's no mention in the whole curriculum document of this area. And I just think that the professional bodies, if they want to build this into student consciousness, it needs to be more overt. There needs to be exam questions that are based around case studies in this area that go into more depth. And it needs to be more overt in the syllabus to get consciousness going, because there's an assumption in the syllabus that we're all about profit. Everybody, business equals profit, I think, is the assumption from most students. And so all the processes and models and tools that are in the syllabus, everyone will assume about profit, but they won't necessarily assume that also a function of profit long term may also be your approach to sustainability.
Yes.
And that's what I meant by the professional bodies driving this. I don't think they are driving it through their syllabus. I think they're doing lots of stuff around the outside, and Ian's mentioned a number of resources and studies and everything else. But if we really want to build bottom up here, it needs to be up front and in the faces of students that are doing the professional qualifications.
Well, Darren, I think that we, again, as academics, accounting academics, quite a lot of us are involved in the professional, but with the professional bodies. So again, we can advocate and champion for this to happen. So, I mean, this all seems to be coming back to us.
Yeah, quite possibly.
No, we do.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
We do have and particularly, you know, kind of as leaders of the community as well, we really need to use our kind of like our power and privilege to do that. And certainly, you know, all of the accountancy bodies in the UK have kind of signed up to become net zero organizations. They're signed, I think, up to the Glasgow Accord. You know, there's lots of sticks to beat them with. And certainly, you know, I've kind of written some stuff for SEMA. They've just kind of commissioned a series of articles for financial management for practitioners. And we do need to take opportunities to do that, you know, and sort of like actually writing for professional and practice and actually engaging with it. We need to do more of that as well and push them on. They're not a major barrier. They're like anybody else. They just need to be pushed and prodded and told that you can do things differently, you know.
Yeah. Excellent.
They're certainly funding research in the space and stuff like that. So I told you I get joined by the buyer at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, maybe Darren, we all need to challenge ourselves and think about what can we do both within academia and beyond it in terms of if we have these relationships.
I remember David Campbell, you know, sadly passed a few years ago. David was the ACC examiner and he did some amazing stuff. He actually did get CSR, all that stuff into his syllabus, as did other people. We just need to maybe go around all these people. We possibly know every single one of the examiners and do what Dave did and just actually pop it in. Do what, you know, kind of Jeffrey and other people did. Say, who are the examiners? Look, here's an exam question, put it in.
Yeah, no, I agree, Ian. So just to let you know, in the chat, there is a couple of different points that Tu has put in something about carbon literacy training. Let me see, Megan, you've put in some examples of case studies on ethics. Then 2 has put in again something about using stories to teach managerial accounting with the sustainability theme. So there's quite a lot in there. So look, brilliant. I think we had a great discussion today. I think hopefully what we've done today is start this is really just the start of the conversation, but maybe to get you a little bit excited about what you can do and what your role might be in progressing the sustainability issue within your department and more broadly. What we do is with our recordings, we put them onto a YouTube video. So I'm just, Sarah, are you still there? I just want to put that link up again, and people can maybe, I think you have to register for the link. Sarah, can you, maybe you've already done it, Sarah?
I have done it. I did it a wee while ago, but I shall I'll bring it back down again so that it's,
Sorry.
no, it's fine. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
If I can just, one final thing, Joan, is that I round about June next year, there will be a wonderful textbook on carbon and climate accounting and climate finance being published, which will be available for use in academic year, sort of like 2023. So I've got about a third of it written so far, and it's looking really good. That's all.
Okay, well, you need to inform us, Ian, of when things are happening and when things are coming out, and then we can start to put stuff out on social media and by emails and stuff.
Yeah.
So you can see there the YouTube link. If you maybe just register or subscribe, to our channel, that's where we put up all of our workshops, and you can get them, and you can maybe share some of those in your teaching, etc. Just to let you know as well that the CDAF committee, we have a number of vacancies outstanding at the moment, and if you're interested in joining CDAF on the committee, please send a short expression of interest to Sarah. You've got her email address there at the bottom by mid-April. And just finally, the conference, I think it's in here somewhere, Sarah. I'm desperately trying to find it. It's in here somewhere.
It is. It is.
Oh, there it is there. Okay. So our annual conference is taking place on the 5th of May. It would be good. We are quite active in terms of using LinkedIn. I don't think we have the LinkedIn link here at the moment, but if you want to subscribe to LinkedIn, that would be great, and then you can get any of our communications. So just want to thank the 2 guest speakers. I think this has been a fantastic event. There's been lots of discussion, which really, I think, is the true mark of how successful it was. So if anybody else want to say anything in final remarks before we leave? Okay.
Just thank you.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. And I think, you know, one of my colleagues has left, and I already sent her a message, and she goes, guess who's it's being delegated to? And I said yes. So you know, she's already knows that we're not doing enough, and so good. Thank you for giving us the kick that we need. That's really important.
Yeah, and we may, Ian, we might have, by the sounds of it, there's a lot of interest in this area. So we may have a follow-up event maybe in another year or 18 months' time. So it would be great if you could come back and report to us on further developments in this space.
No problem at all. And do keep, I think, sort of training. There are some stuff going on with the CSER and the CSER. The easiest way is to look at the Facebook page. All notice in there. So.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure seeing all of you. We really appreciate you taking the time. I mean, it's 4:15. It's time to clock off for the day and clock off for the week as well. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and hope to see you again at the next CDAF event.